Let's get started. So hello and welcome. And as Alison was saying, it's week 4 of our 10-week programme. So I hope you've been enjoying everything so far, and I've really been enjoying the pictures you've been sending me. So those of you who are in my free Facebook group, Flower Start World, you've been posting them there. And I get some by email and some by WhatsApp as well. So it's quite exciting seeing what happens week by week and how you interpret the brief. So the format today will be exactly the same for every week. I will spend the first half an hour demonstrating to you. So at this point, I have spotlight my video. So and I've muted you all, so you won't be able to actually physically speak to me. So if you have a question, do leave it in the chat button box, and as soon as I see it, I will be able to respond to it live. But after the recorded bit of the class starts, I will take you all off mute, and that isn't the bit that I send out afterwards for those that couldn't attend. So we can have a chit chat, and we can compare notes, see what everyone else, see what you're doing with the materials you've got, and hopefully that'll give us some more inspiration as well. So I really like doing that bit at the end, and get to know each other over the weeks. And I'm always really intrigued to see what you've brought along to class. So my big question, first starting off, is how did you get on with your water pearls last week? I know that some of you have been in the production and using your gallons and gallons of pearls. I just wanted to show you, for those that are a bit nervous about the technique and perhaps you've not given it a go yet, that this is the demonstration piece I did last week. And it has got a flower on it, so the gel has worked out. What I have done, I thought the gel just felt a little bit dry to my touch, so I have dribbled a bit more water in. I've got another bud coming out here, and what I've done, as the flower came out, it was leaning towards the light on my kitchen window, so I've propped it up a little bit, and this is the value of the sticks or whatever you add into your little arrangement, that you can use those to support your flower heads. And then behind me over my shoulder, you can see the yellow version with my yellow candle and the Easter eggs, and the pink, which was actually the pearl barley and the silk flower. So I'm going to leave those on my shoulder and tuck this out of the way. And then a quick little chat about next week, or a question. Yes, you're asking about the water pearls. Yes, they are a water source. So it took, for my 20-gram bottle of pearls, it would have taken a litre of water. So over time, the gel soaks up the water and it does become a water source. My personal opinion is not as effective for arranging flowers in. Say you bought flowers in the supermarket or your florist, my natural preference is always to put those into fresh water. But if you're going for a designer look, and imagine you've got, you've bought 2 or 3 gerberas and you've got a nice tall vase, you could tumble the water pearls in it and then stand your gerbera in. So it gives a really modern look. And we were just trying to use our bulbs in a slightly more modern way. And the 3 versions I showed you was the water pearls, the barley, which was a dried flower arrangement. Nothing in there is, actually there is something fresh, is the twig is fresh, but it doesn't need any water. And then the yellow one over my shoulder here was actually a more traditional way of planting bulbs. They were physically in compost with a layering of decorative moss over the top. So yes, it's an alternative to as a water source, but it does dry out over time, so you do need to make sure that it's kept moist. So before we go into what we're doing this week and changing my camera angle over, I just thought I would tell you a little bit about next week, just in case if you haven't booked yet, you might be interested to see what we are doing. And it is every week I do send out a handout. You can't see that very clearly from there, but there's a short buying list with some links that will take you through to Amazon. I'm an Amazon affiliate, so I may get a small commission if you buy through those links. And even if you don't care to shop through Amazon, at least if you click the picture, you can see what it is that I'm talking about if you're not sure. So there's always a short buying list, and then there's some photographs. I've printed mine out in black and white to save on the printing, but I normally put in a couple of photographs to give you a bit of inspiration. So we don't always end up making things that look identical to pictures or identical to each other. It's all just about having a creative springboard so you can go off and make something that fits in with what you've got at home. Why go out and buy anything if you've got things that you can rediscover in your stash, in your cupboards? You may as well make use of those. But if there's anything you haven't got, I do send you the links through to them. So next week, we're making a twiggy lattice for our spring flowers. So if you've got any flowers poking up in the garden, they're all covered in snow at the moment, which is long awaited, and we're very excited. You'll know that the spring flowers are on quite soft stems, and they're quite short as well. Thinking about snowdrops and potato-tape daffodils, the mini ones. It's not until a bit later on in the year, probably April and sometimes into May, when we get the full height daffodils and tulips. So it's quite nice if you've got things in the garden you can dig up, or you've bought some potted bulbs that you want to put into a container. And having a lattice support work is a really good way of doing that. So for next week, you will need a container of some sort. So because I'm thinking I'm going to be using short stemmed flowers, I've got a container. This one is metal. I think it's pewter actually. Short. I can go with quite a shallow dish because my flowers I'm going to be using, and my stems are going to be quite short, so I don't need to go on a really deep vase. But of course, if you have a deep vase to hand that you want to use, that's perfectly fine as well. So I've got something in metal, a little footed container there, and then I've got a very similar thing here, but this is a ceramic one, and a green dish there. So you'll need some sticks as well. So that can be anything. It could be something from your floristry cupboard. So if you have canes or Medalino sticks, you might want to bring those. It might be something like your kitchen drawer, like the long kebab sticks. It could actually, just thinking about it, be knitting needles. Have you got a drawer full of mismatched knitting needles that you don't know what to do with? That might be quite a nice thing to do, especially if you're a knitter, or perhaps you're going to gift your flower onto a neighbour who enjoys knitting, and they could use the knitting needles afterwards. Or what I'm probably going to use, I'm going to probably go around the garden and see what I can collect. So I might be collecting dogwood stems, which are showing up beautifully against the snow. We've got red, yellow and green ones. I might collect silver birch branches. I'm a fan of silver birch, and I particularly look out for them on my walks with the dog in town and the countryside. After windy weather, they shake down and you'll find them scattered on the floor. So that's quite a good thing. Take an elastic band with you and you can sort of collect a witch's broom handle worth of them and bring those to class. It may be that you've got some lichened branches, the lichen growing, and that might add some textural detail. So you might decide that you want everything really straight and uniform, or you want to work with nature and have your branches or your twigs different lengths and different shapes and sizes. So it's entirely up to you. The one thing you will need, because we're going to tie them together, almost imagine pickup sticks. We're going to pick the sticks up and drop them down and tie them when they fall, or the other option, if you're having very straight sticks, is we're going to make a grid effect that we're then going to lie on top of the container and thread our flowers through. So in terms of tying together, you can use string, you could use wool, you could use your decorative reel wires if you've got those that look like a reel of cotton on a reel. What I'm probably going to be using is this paper covered wire, bind wire, and it looks like string, but it's got wire in it, and it's really handy because you can tie it one-handed. So if you do decide to use string, it's almost like you need a third pair of hands because you've got to hold your sticks in place and then tie a knot with two hands. Whereas with this twist tie here, if I hold that against my top, you just loop it underneath what you're twisting, and then with one hand you can tie it together, a bit like one of the old-fashioned bread bag ties. I know they're all plastic now, but they used to be, and sandwich bag ties, something like that. So I do like the bind wire. I've got this in brown, it comes in green, and those of you who are here at Christmas, I bought one that was a Christmassy red, and I think they did do a dark brown as well, so something to tie with as well. So I will send out the the workshop sheet when I send out the video after class today, so you'll be able to have a closer look. And if you've got any questions about that, you're more than welcome to email me back, or if you want to ask a question in my free Facebook group, Flower Start World, we can talk there as well. So I'll just move these across to one side, clear the decks a little bit, and show you what we're going to be using today. So we're going to be making a sign today, and as Valentine's Day is coming up this weekend, so we're filming on Tuesday, Valentine's Day is on Sunday, I thought we would use some of our crafting skills to make a little sign with the option of adding in a floral flourish or not, so it's entirely up to you. As I'm a florist, I can't do anything with adding a little bit of flower or greenery, whether that be real or silk, into my pieces. It doesn't quite feel natural. So I've done a bit of prep. I've taken this wooden block, and if you came to class last week, I would have shown you this. It was someone has DIY'd a lovely reindeer on the back, and I couldn't quite face scrubbing them off. So I've turned my wood up the other way, and I have actually done a bit of prep on that. And I have taken my acrylic paint, so a crafter's paint, and perhaps if you're an artist, will you use paint like that? I'm not entirely sure, but this is a pack that I bought, 100 millimeters of acrylic paint, and I've used my wide paintbrush and I've painted that on there, and it has dried. Top tip, if you're planning to do this as we make and create today, is if you've got a hairdryer to hand, it will dry your paint really quickly, and it shouldn't hold you up if you're desperate to get making. So I have got that. I'm going to do that little bit of a dry painting technique on there again, as I did with the canvas we did the week before last. Was that week 2, I think? Just add a bit of textural detail, but again, that's entirely up to you whether or not you do it. I've also got as an option the canvas. Talking about the canvas, when I bought these for the mixed media we did with the wool and wrapping, my pack that I bought, I think I've got 3 or 4 canvases in the pack. So I know that Joan has already asked me here about how she can use her canvas, because I did talk about how we're going to add our decorative sign. We're going to do some wire work on the sign, and could she use hot glue? I don't know whether the hot glue will sear through the canvas, but there is an option. I did suggest we turn the canvas over and tried the hot glue gun. I'm just testing. Yes, it is hot. We have plugged it in. But you've also got an option of stitching your sign in place, and we will talk about that later on as we get to the fixing stage. And then what if you haven't got any of those bits of equipment? What are you going to do? Well, I have got here a piece of packaging. It's a piece of cardboard from online things I got delivered. You know, as you know, they come in big brown cardboard boxes. So I've cut off a square of this. I'm not flipping it over just yet, because you'll see what I've already prepared on the other side. And I want you to wait and see that. Or it could be a piece of cardboard from a cereal packet. So again, it just depends on how robust you want it to be. It may be, if you're practicing, you want to do it on cardboard, or you want to wait until you've got your more solid piece of wood. And in terms of size, well, it's entirely up to you. If you know you want to write a really, really long phrase, you've either got to be able to write really small, or do your signage very small, or you need to get a sign that's long enough. So I'm just going to do a simple word on here. I'm going to write love on here. So it's quite a nice size, it's quite a short word, and I've got a sign, it says hand high, tall, and it's 2 hands across. I haven't even measured it. So it doesn't matter what size, what shape it is, but make sure if you've got something bigger, or perhaps you've got an A4 sign, that you might want to think about your words and your decorative detail and position it in a place where it doesn't look like you've got loads and loads of blank white space. So I've got my hot glue gun. I've got my floristry wire. This is the aluminium wire that is lovely and bendy. And I've got a short section here, which I need to unravel. I'm going to try and use that first before I cut into the big one. You could do the same project in garden twine. I've actually got some turquoise twine, which my sister gave me for Christmas. We do £5 presents. That was in my little gift bag. And you could do normal garden twine. And I am going to be using for my floral flourish my little test tube. So you'll recognise those from when we did the mixed media on the canvas frame. That one's glass and this one is plastic. So we need to think about how we're going to fix that onto the frame. I've got a hot glue gun off to the side. So the hot glue gun is really good when you're crafting, but it's quite a brittle finishing. So plus side is, if I get fed up with the sign and I want to remake it in the summer, I could just get a palette knife out and ease up the sign. It'll come off really easily, which is good. But if you want to keep it a bit longer, you may find that, you know, if you knock the sign, it may fall apart. So you might want to choose a stronger glue. And I have got this E6000 glue, which takes 24 hours to adhere. So it really is a seriously strong glue. So I do use that for some things, but I think for a sort of craft-based project, I'm quite happy that it's got, you know, it's not going to live forever, that I've got an option of remaking it into something else. So that's why I like the hot glue gun. It's quick, easy to use, and it will hold for a limited period of time, but I can take it apart because it is brittle if I decide to change my mind. So there we go. And also off to the side, I've got my spring gingham ribbons that have made an appearance every week. I'm not quite so sure I'll be using those this week. And then the option of wool as a replacement for the string, a soft replacement. Oh, I did think I might wrap my aluminium wire in wool, so I get a woolly look to my little phrase instead of the shiny metal look. And again, that'll just take a little bit of time. So I'm going to show you the metal look first, and then there's sort of a little taster of how you could add on and change things. So I will now change the camera angle around. So I will shuffle and scrape my chair and then come back to you. So I am going to be working on my little board here. So I've already painted it white, just a light colour of the acrylic paint. I only gave it one coat. If you wanted a more solid coverage, you could go for the 2 coats. And I thought I would refresh you about this dry brush technique, just to add a little bit of graining, just a little bit of 3-dimensional appeal, really. It's a bit like when we work with our flowers. We want, you know, colour, form and texture. We want interest rather than everything being flat and the same. So I have bought some paints that I bought for a project ages ago and I've never ever used. And these are little acrylic paints. One is very pale and one is brown. And what I thought I might do is a little dot of the pale. I'm conscious of the fact I'm sort of working with cream on cream on cream, so you may not be able to see the colour differences. I'm just going to squeeze out a little bit of both. You hardly need any at all. One's called chocolate pudding, the dark one's chocolate pudding and the other one's truffle. And what I'm going to do is to dip my paintbrush into the paint, and then I hardly got anything on there at all, trying to sort of get rid of the excess by slapping it around my saucer and then brushing it onto my board. And you can hardly see that. Perhaps you can see those little, I've been slightly heavy-handed over there. So it just gives it a little bit of texture. It's not a solid flat white. You could go back in there again, but just for speed and contrast, I'm now dipping into the brown, getting rid of the excess, because I don't want it to look as if I've tried to actually paint it across. I did my heavy-handed bit up there, so I'm going to try and do my heavy bit. It's always difficult knowing where to start and how much paint will come off. And if you decided you had a go at this and you're thinking, oh, it's not for me, why did I start it? All you need to do is get your white paint back out and go over it again. But it just adds a bit of contrast, really. I'm imagining in my mind that this is a piece of silver birch. And, you know, have I convinced you there? Perhaps I would need a bit of a black in there, but it just gives a bit of textural contrast, and it's a technique I quite enjoy doing. And the next thing is, the idea is I'm going to spell out the word love on this sign. Now, if you were really good with your paintbrush, you could imagine, you could just straight away paint out your lettering. I'm going to make my lettering out of this wire, and that gives a really great contrast with the red wire against the white board. But how am I going to do that without messing it up? So what I'm going to do, over on the side here, I've got a sheet of printer paper, and I'm going to trace around my board. I just need to do a line here, just so I can have my piece of paper to size. I'm going to fold it down on a line. So I've ended up with a scrap piece of paper, that is the size of my board. So I can start to write out in my best handwriting and trying to have a continuous flow, because if I'm using this piece of white, I want to make this sign out in one continuous flow. So I might not write it in one go, but I do need to add in the loops to make it loopy handwriting. So how big do I want to do it? Do I want to, you know, a bit in the middle and leave a bit for my little, imagine my little stem of flowers at the end. I'm conscious that I've got clear on clear, but you'll have to imagine that. Quite difficult for the camera to pick up. Or if you're working with a bigger board, you know, love is, you could have love here and love is and the dots afterwards, whatever phrase you want. Or perhaps it's going to say hope or joy or happy or whatever word you like. As Valentine's Day is around the corner, I am going with love. So here goes. And it doesn't matter, I've got a pencil here. It doesn't matter if I make a mistake, because this is just my guide. And if I go lightly first, I feel under pressure here to do my best handwriting. Love. Something like that. Now I'm conscious that looks quite light, so I'm quite happy with that. So now I'm happy with it. I could ink it in a bit heavier so I can actually see, and hopefully you'll be able to see. So it doesn't need to be calligraphy perfect. It just needs to be a guide for what I'm doing. I'm doing this on top of my kitchen table and I'm picking up all the ridges and bumps on the table. And you may want to perfect it. Sometimes I just write it and just go with the flow. So my letters aren't evenly spaced at all, but that is what I want. And then I've got my piece of aluminium wire. I'm going to attempt to fashion that using this cutout here, using the draft text here to follow the lettering. So I'm not going to freeform it, I'm following a template. And to do this, I have got some pliers here to do this. So I'm going to come around this side, and this is a painstaking job. So I'm going to start off a little bit. I'm going to curl the wire round at the beginning and think, well, that is a pretty good match, that bit there, and then gently work my way up. So this is a lovely wire, lovely and tactile, but the only thing is it's sort of like a one-use wire, only in the sense that I want these letters to look quite precise. If I go disastrously wrong and scrunch up the wire, it's never going to flatten out again. So it takes some degree of perseverance and calmness to get to do this. And that is why I find that these letters, you know, working your way around to the letters is really helpful. Now, as it comes to the O, I just need to work this out, because normally I would do my O and I would go up, back and round. Let's do that. So can I do it with my fingers, or do I need to have my wire coming in? I think I can do it with my fingers, and I'll need to go over the top. So I'm going to just roll the wire back over there and spin it round. And then I need to find my little loopy O at the top, spin that round like that. And then coming back, I should move the wire out of the way at the moment, and then you can see how far I've got. So my O, I guess pretty much as you would do your handwriting, has gone over. So it's not always a single layer of wire, there's a double layer of wire there. So I get to my O, and I think I want, as I come down to the V, quite a sharp return. So I might use my pliers just to pinch those wires together. Oops. Not sure I can do it with my fingers first, and then just pinch a little bit just to give me a bit more of precision. Coming down, up and round. And then I want a bit more precision here as I come down with that final bit towards my E. So I'm going to bend it down and then tighten it. So you could do this with a pair of scissors. you know, if you weren't cutting through, you could use the scissors if you didn't have any pliers to hand. Go round we go, over the edge. So I'm just working a little bit at a time, around the top, back, and my last little bit, hurrah, we've got there at the end. So I want that to stop there. I'm going to cut it slightly longer and finish off how I started by just bending that top bit round a little bit, like so. So I've got myself a love sign. And of course, you could really sit and finesse all your curves and work on it really well. So that would lie onto my sign like that. Actually, I quite like that at a jaunty angle like that. It looks a bit like a neon light sign. I'm going to put this away just for a moment because there's something else I want to show you. How do you transfer the letters onto your piece of cardboard? Now, you might remember doing this as a child. So once you've got your letters out, I'm going to go over it really hard, really firmly with my pencil. Do you remember doing this with that tracing paper that you used to get in the toilets at school? It was tracing paper, wasn't it? Not toilet paper. So I'm going really hard over here, over the back. You will do this neater than I'm doing. I'm trying to just show you the idea rather than being really precise. And then I need to do the same thing on the back. So I don't know whether you can tell if I lift that up, you can see it there. I need to turn it over. If I was to trace over this now, it would be the wrong way. So I am going back over so I can see it. So that first bit of heavy drawing was because I needed to see these lines. I'm now going back and doing it on the wrong side. There's a bit of the O there. Going up like that, like so. And then you take your clean piece of cardboard and then with it on the right side, you would then go back over it. And it's a way of transferring your lettering across. So it will just come out really faintly. I'm not going to do all of this, but you get the idea. You will see that indentation, so you can draw straight over the top. So it's a way of transferring your written text over the top, and it comes out very faint, and then you would go through. But if you feel confident on doing that on your piece of card, you can just straight away go and do that. But you might find that way of transferring your lettering handy if it suits the technique that you're going to be using. And once you've done your cardboard like this, or you've written your text direct onto your wood, whichever way you feel happy doing that, how do you want to spell your lettering out if you don't have any of this wire? And this is where your string would come in and your hot glue gun. And you would very carefully, bearing in mind the hot glue gun is hot, you would glue little sections across here and you would start to add in your string. And you'd come up and round and coming back and looping down. So in my best Blue Peter fashion, I've done one already like that. So you can see that's done out with string. So I've done this on a piece of card. It would have worked equally as well on the board, and I would, instead of drawing freehand on here and perhaps making mistakes, if you do that transfer method, you'll know you'll have the writing exactly where you want it. And if you've got a really steady hand, you could spell out these letters we're using your hot glue gun, which, if I'm honest, is really difficult to do, but I have done it in the spirit of trying to do my best Blue Peter job. I've spelt this out in glue, but you can see here that as I went round my writing, my glue, I was having to constantly pull the trigger, and it's a bit wobbly in places. But I thought this might be quite a nice technique to pick out some detailing. And what I'm going to do a little bit later, when we do the make and create, I thought I would experiment with spraying on some of my Oasis spray paint. I thought if I sprayed that on and then took a cloth, I could, sorry, I keep kicking the stand there. I could spray that on just to right the way across, almost as if I was doing graffiti. And then I could go back and just take off with a cloth the top layer of paint, just to add, again, a bit of extra definition. So I'm not going to do that now because I'm sitting in the kitchen. It's not a good idea to be spray painting indoors. I haven't got any protective covers down. But when we make and create afterwards, I will do that outside in the garden, come back and show you. And for those of you who are watching on the record, I will put a photograph in with the newsletter that I send out and show you how to do that. Now, what happens if you love the lettering and you like the ease and you want the tactile experience of working with the lettering, but you don't like the shininess of the lettering? Well, that's when your wool comes in, and you may think about adding in your wool. I'm going to do this on a sample bit of the wire, that you would tie a knot and perhaps a dab of hot glue, and you could wrap the wool around your piece of wire. Now, the thing to think about here is how much wire do you need to make your letters? And do you want to, I guess you could measure it. You know, you could follow around with a piece of string across your penciled guide and then come back and measure it out. That would probably be the best way of doing it. But I, for here, might perhaps do enough that I could bend into a love heart. So I'm wrapping this round, and then at the other end, I will need probably just the dab of the hot glue to do that. So it's easy to do the beginning bit, but it becomes harder. The longer the piece of wire is, the harder it is to wrap all the way around, because you're sort of having to stretch over that bit at the end. I'm going to aim for, I'll just do a bit more, and then I can work on this a bit later when we're making and creating together. So I'm going to finish that off with a tiny dot of glue. And again, just being really careful I don't burn myself. Glue is hot. I can seal that off there and cut it. So now I have got a wool covered piece of the wire. So it will do all the bendy stuff that it did before. This time I could shape it. And let's see if I can fashion a love heart. Love hearts are really difficult to do. They never end up equally balanced. But we're going for an artisan look. And if we wanted a perfect one, we would have, you know, bought a sign from a factory. And I think the secret about hearts for me is to get a point at the bottom. So again, I might press that down, squeeze together. Just straighten those bits out. Oops. The wool has come apart. Just a demonstration piece. I'm going to squeeze that to the bottom. So it gives me a nice point. Oops, I'm unraveling here. I'm just going to do another dab of hot glue just to make sure that is firm. Like so. And I'm just going to have to bear the pain as I hold that for a second. And then I can spread it out and get my nice loopy bits at the top. So there you would have, and you can imagine if you'd done that with some textured wool, that was just regular double knitting, but if you had some wool with a bit more texture, you could do that all the way along. But it may be that I want to put that on my sign like that with a little love heart. Or if you were really clever, you know, I could have done the L on its own, then a separate love heart instead of the O, and across on the side like that. So the next issue is, how am I going to fix the sign, fix the metalwork onto my sign? So if you've did the glue and the string, you've done already. If you've had this sort of more 3D look, how are you going to fix it? How are you going to fix your little heart if you want to do that? And how are you going to fix your little test tube for your floral flourish. So what I'm going to do here is that you could drill holes in this sign. I don't want to do that because I think I might want to use the sign for something else. But if you had a drill and you wanted to keep the sign permanently, you could drill little holes here, a pair of holes, and then thread your yarn or string or binding wire through to attach it on, like we did for the mixed media canvas. At the same time, you might want to put holes in to hang your sign up with a cord. But I don't want to do that because I don't want to get my drill out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of felt. So I've already cut out, I seem to have every shade of pink and red going. I use my craft hole punch to cut out a felt shape. This could be just a, a square of felt. It doesn't have to be heart shaped. And actually it didn't cut out particularly well. I did have to trim, but it got me almost to where I wanted to be. But my thought is if I glued that on there, I could then attach my fixings through the heart and I could have it laying on like that. So off to the side here, I've got a ball of string I've threaded onto a needle. And if you're doing yours on a canvas, this might be the way that you fix not only your test tube, but also your sign. So I'm going to just drop my pencil there. I'm going to cut off a length of the yarn of the string. I'm going to stitch in like that. And then I'm going to glue this heart onto my canvas. So a bit of glue. Again, I'm using hot glue for ease. Just be careful about the hold. It's only a small test tube. You don't want it falling off midway. So I'm patting that down like that. And then you can imagine that I just then go in and tie off my little test tube like that. And that's where, you could have a single red little rose or a little flower, it could be a bulb out of the garden, but just be sure that your fixings are firm and you don't want to make something so heavy with the flower in it that it suddenly slides out and the fixings won't work. So it looks beautiful on the table, but just make sure it does actually hold in position. And you could do this the same thing with a ribbon. If you couldn't get the needle through, you could cut two little slits into your felt at the back and do it that way. And then the simple thing to do will be a couple of dots of hot glue in just the right place. Once you're happy with your lettering, I did think I'd have it all in one line, but I quite like the jaunty angle here. So I might cross perhaps behind the E and over by the O. So a dot of hot glue and a dot of hot glue there. And that will hold it in place. And if you felt you needed a stronger hold, you'll need to get a stronger glue. And you've got the option, of course, you could layer up. So perhaps you might want to stitch this onto a piece of fabric that you then glue onto the board. So there's all sorts of opportunities. So I haven't actually got any flowers to hand. I did find, though, a piece. I'm going to make some Christmas tree tea. So that's the only green thing I could find to hand this morning, but you get the idea. If I slide something in like that, you could imagine that would be where my little flower would go. And if I wanted to add in my little heart over here, I'm not sure I do now, I've got the heart across the way, but you could add in then as many of the little decorative flourishes as you wanted to. So the moment of truth will, when I come and lift this up, will it all stay in place? Fingers crossed, here it goes. So that is the little sign. So I will say, I emphasize again, the hot glue gun is fantastic, but it's not really, really strong. So this will be fine. Where I've got it on mine, I might put it on a shelf, prop it up on a shelf, or I may well put it on my mantelpiece. It's not going to be a sort of heavy duty, long living thing, but it will certainly look lovely for Valentine's Day. And because I haven't actually written Happy Valentine's Day, love applies all year round, doesn't it? So I can keep it up a little bit longer. And that little bit there, I will probably, it doesn't quite look right. I might, if you get given a rose, when you pick up the supermarket roses, there's always one that's cut really short, and that would be the perfect place to put it, or you may decide that you don't want any flowers at all. So I hope that has inspired you. So I'm going to sign off now from the live video recording, and this will be winging its way to you as soon as I've edited it. And then for the ladies that are here in the group, we will, I'll take you off mute, and then it's over to you with questions, and then making and creating together. And I'll certainly be getting out my spray paint and just having a go to see whether I can get a little 3D look with that raised glue gun writing. So I shall say goodbye and see you next time.